Hi, I'm Phil O'Malley, and I've been on the board of Art Mix for almost a decade. I started as a volunteer back in 2010 when a teaching artist and board member, Lois Main Templeton, invited me to help with a an event to do a party. And after I got to meet the wonderful people at Art Mix and learned about the mission, I haven't left. I've been there ever since. And under this kind of stay at home period in my life, I'm really fortunate that I love working in the garden. I love the colors and the textures, and I love the design, and I love the work and the maintenance and nurturing and changing things around. And as Grady, who's shooting right now, can see over here, my garden just expands and expands. And what I love is different vignettes. Vignettes to me are really exciting, where there's this wonderful corner of beautiful greens and these different textures, and then that long line of just plain blue all the way down the path on the limestone. That blue on top of the limestone to me, up against that dark soil, is gorgeous contrast. And the way the sun hits things, especially this time of day, and incorporating things that mean something to me into the garden. Like this piece is sculptural, but it was from a friend um, who wanted to fashion something for me, and I've had it for maybe 20 years and stuck in plants I've had for 20 years. Um, all of this garden was not here. Every bit of it except for the boxwoods that are over there and in the front. All of this I put in. The only thing that is here is the woods. And the woods used to grow up to about where I'm standing. And I had this vision when I got this house, and I wanted on the ridge to run these plants all the way down around the perimeter and incorporate the woods into the edge of my garden. And they just every day are a wonderful surprise how the lilies pop up and grow into that. And so, two guys that were helping me, Grady being one of them, we went down to the creek and we dug out at least 1,000, had to be 1,500. I think when you walk through this whole place, you see it. And just put this fantastic edge all the way down just to make it just a little more natural. And so many of these plants I've divided, the hostas, and they do really well down here in the shade. And I love that little glimmer of color at the very end next to these big hostas, and how this gorgeous lime green next to this beautiful blue. These ones here came out of my mother's garden, and she died in December, and those mean an awful lot to me. Emotionally, that the fact that these came from her garden that she planted 25 years ago, and she told me a couple years ago, you know, honey, you ought to get a couple of those hostas out of my garden before anybody else gets them. And so I did. And I've been dividing them and placing them in. And the guys helped me. We brought in about 600 bags, 40-pound bags, maybe more, of topsoil. And we replaced all the soil. And we put these borders in with limestone that we dug out from old places, and brought these pots up, which are really wonderful. And I've divided hydrangeas, and this whole stretch of hydrangea all the way down here, the entire stretch of hydrangea is all dug up from where I used to live, and we divided them. And they have almost doubled. They spread in the ground, they've almost doubled. And they run all the way down. called a still bee. As a designer, incorporating the garden into the architecture is so thrilling to be able to do that. And I chose to put this fence up, designed it for the house. And come on up here, I want to show you. And with these limestone walls, and there's this wonderful tree behind you with this round tree. With these gorgeous blossoms in the springtime. It's much more private with this fence around my patio. This used to be like being in a fishbowl, and now I just love it back here that I can be right in the middle of all of this wonderful area. These are getting ready to explode. And that's one of the most beautiful parts of having a garden like this, where you can see every single day where it changes. And these lavender bee balm, the bees are insane about it, and the hummingbirds come on here every morning, and sometimes they swoop down in the afternoon. In this herb garden, walk outside and pick some basil and some thyme, and these flowers just love the zinnias and the lantana, and this lantana tree and the cone flowers and the phlox that are just getting ready to explode. That palette of color to me is just so exciting to look out the kitchen window and look at this, the next one, the bees. And then out here, well, this path heading that way is all well put in since I moved here. Brought in more hydrangeas and all of these. Do you remember when we dug up all of those hostas?
Yeah.
And they were right down the middle. It was like a hosta farm. And we dug them up and separated them and brought in all these bricks and dug that path that leads back there. Let's go up this way. I had this gate put in, and on this. And all these are getting ready to explode. These are limelight hydrangeas, big white plumes. I just chopped back all of that red rose that was right there and let it do its thing all over again. And none of this was here. In fact, this is what we were going to put in today. A lot of these that are in the pots, but we decided to do a video. I'm crazy about these scapes. The bees just love it in here. The hummingbirds just come constantly. And these only last a little while, about a week and a half. You know, they start to die off at the bottom. But this is kind of a holding area for the hostas after I split them. And all of these were brought in. We brought in all of these rocks and built this trellis. And those hostas just keep coming, and this astilbe is absolutely beautiful. That wonderful pinkish mauve, that color up against this slate blue hosta. This thing must be, I'd say 10 or 12 years old. And that color back there with that lime green and that blue is wonderful. And all of a sudden in my garden, I'll find out, like, what's going on here? How come that's dying? But then something new will pop up. And all of this was put in just last year. We needed more room. And these little devils, they just love to dig stuff up. And we have a holding area for more rocks over here to expand. And these gargantuan yellow mums are just the sprinklers in them. Yeah, they're just now ready to explode. They're going to be just filled with this canopy of yellow. And right back here is one of my favorites, Joe Pye weed. It's also Linda Whistler's one of her favorites, Joe Pye weed, and gets these beautiful kind of dusty rose plumes off the top of them with the lavender bee balm, and look at all the red scarlet bee balm. It's just a field of it. Up against the white flowers, the cone flowers. Okay. As a painter, when I get in my garden, I paint. I choose colors and I let nature also have its surprises. But I'm telling you, this beautiful relationship between the white and the reds and the yellows and the oranges and these gorgeous fuchsia pinks and deep, deep purples. And this puppy over here is getting ready to explode, that white hydrangea. But right next to it, her sister has got a jump on her. She's all ready for the party. Look at this thing. She's all dressed up and waiting outside and waiting on her sister to come out there. And the irises, after they bloom, I love keeping the straps because that color in the garden. Okay, and this painting of color. Nature isn't nature. You ready? And all of these colors are just amazing. This beautiful, beautiful palette. All these colors up against this tree. Now Grady did an amazing job on shaping that tree. It's so important that it's a round sphere. And this was one banana tree that I planted last spring. And now we've counted, there are at least a dozen. Usually I have to plant it every single year. But it was a mild winter and with plenty of mulch on it. So they started popping up. And we've counted there are at least 12 coming out of that one. So mama's babies are just going and going. And it probably grows, I would say, foot every other week. But up against that cerulean blue sky, this thing is, the contrast is just amazing. I think there's something so beautiful about the color of the sumac with the color of the banana tree and that cerulean blue sky. And everywhere you turn, there's just a splash of color. This is Princess of the Prairie. And it was a present to me from a neighbor maybe 20 years ago. And I've given it to maybe 10 different people. Starts, and it just continues to blossom and blossom and blossom, and the bees are crazy about it. That hosta is from my mother's garden, and it has probably doubled in the last 2 years. It just loves it there. With all those lavender scapes coming off of it. And we could head over. Yeah, and this bed wasn't here, and we dragged in all this limestone, found it from houses that were being torn down, just left in the different lots. And this was given to me by a friend. I love the contrast with this color and this deep. And so from here, this hill, the rocks all the way around, every bit of this is new. The relationship between this beautiful, beautiful slate blue hosta and these little green and white ones in the background, and then all these wonderful white hydrangeas just popping up, and then little surprises, and we'll pick up these chimney pots, got those out of houses that are being torn down, and just put plants in them. And there's a lovely little spot over here to sit and just kind of relax. The garden can be very contemplative. There's one thing I learned about in gardening is one day I was complaining to a friend of mine about some things that were really bothering me, and I introduced all these things that were problems that I was trying to figure out, and he reminded me, he said, don't you understand? You're weeding your garden. Every single day, as you sift through those problems, you're weeding your garden. And it just made so much sense. So Grady and I, and another one of his high school friends, we brought in all of these rocks and all of these hostas, and they have probably doubled, some of them even tripled. And what I had envisioned, and it worked out that way, is this border of these wonderful tiger lilies behind these very formal hostas with this edge of rock up against the woods. The woods is kept all natural. Can you hear the birds?
Yeah.
I know it. You can hear them, and they just look at this. So we wrapped it all the way around, and Grady had this wonderful idea. He said, you can't just arbitrarily stop that wall right there of those rocks. We got to wrap it around. So what we're doing now is continuing to pull out more of these weeds, and we're going to wrap this rock all the way around. And this bed over here, oh, you got to get a shot of that right here. Go straight up into this oak tree. this oak tree has probably been here 300 years. It has to be. Wouldn't you think it was close to 300 years?
300
and
or
look,
400.
It goes straight up there with that thing. I mean, it just keeps going and going and going. And that one limb that reaches for the light all the way out there to the right, that thing must extend 50 or 60 feet, wouldn't you think?
Oh, definitely.
Since it gets full sun, it's all wildflower. And we dragged in all these bricks that came from old houses that just people left them, leaving them around and picking them up. And the bee balm is just going crazy. And all these lilies are getting ready to explode in orange. So we're going to have the dusty, kind of dusty rose on the scarlet bee balm, and we have these pie pan hibiscus and the black-eyed Susans all the way around, and there's this just continuous row of these phlox. This beautiful magenta bee balm, and look at the bees going crazy on that. And again, the gargantuan yellow mums, surrounded by black-eyed Susans and more phlox. And the banana tree down here, she turned into 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. Looks like 6 babies in there. And part of the narrative that I love in my garden is when I incorporate some statuary, but nothing that's perfect. Like, for example, this was discarded. It's the girl or the boy holding the basket, and the basket is broken. And holding that basket of bounty, the broken basket, but holding it up to the sky for nature's bounty that will continuously run over it. He's one of my favorites. And I was looking out my kitchen window, and I realized this bed needs lavender. The color lavender to play off of the beautiful oranges and the yellows and the greens, the whites. And I thought to myself, aha, I'll get some lavender. So I'm popping in a plant of lavender right here. It needed the color lavender, and now it has the plant lavender. And I just think that's going to be wonderful, and it will grow each year. It plays off of this white quartz, and we'll see what we get. I think I'm going to enjoy that when I look out my kitchen window.
Hi, my name is Britt Sutton, and I'm the president and CEO of ArtMix. First, we want to thank you for joining us today for our online curriculum. ArtMix is an organization that transforms the lives of individuals with disabilities through the creation of art. Today, you participated in one of our community classes. Usually, these classes are in our studios and for a small fee. We sincerely hope that you'll consider making a donation to our program after watching today's classes. Please visit artmixindiana.org for more information, and we thank you for joining us.